Hello YouTube family, my name is Anthony. If we haven't met, welcome to Break the Twitch. This is all about emotions and intentional living, specifically approaching the way that we go about living our lives in a way that allows us to identify and respond to our emotional needs so that the fireman doesn't have to come in and put out any fires and twitch our way to dealing with the emotions we're feeling. Essentially, if we're feeling really overwhelmed with emotion, or if we've got a bunch of stuff we're feeling that really builds up and adds up over time, sometimes those feelings can become too much to deal with. And so we have to dissociate, or we have to deal with those feelings in a way that looks like eating sugar or foods that we don't necessarily want to be eating in that particular moment or in that phase of life, whatever it may be. It might be scrolling on our phones or doing other things to distract ourselves from having to deal with the difficult emotions we're feeling. So there's one step here that goes into identifying the feelings we're feeling, but the other part, which I'm going to talk about in this video, is actually going into when you feel one of these four basic emotions or some variation of them, what is it that they are asking for? So what is it that it actually needs, and what do you need to solve or relax or relieve that emotion? How do we answer the call that our emotions are putting out in an appropriate way that allows us to live more intentionally or be more choiceful? That's an interesting word. More choiceful in the way that we live our lives and deal with these things. So with that being said, this really is about feeling what we're feeling. It's really about experiencing these feelings and then knowing what to do to answer that question. It's very easy to think about minimalism and intentional living and think that it looks like a lot of these beautiful minimalist aesthetic videos on YouTube, and like that's what you need in order to live an intentional life. But really, when it comes down to it, intentionality is about, sure, creating an environment that helps you focus on what matters to you, where you can love your attention and direct that attention towards things that matter. But at the same time, it's about understanding why impulses occur and why those moments where we feel out of control, like we do things that aren't actually helpful for us or things that might come across as sabotagey. Why do we do those things, and what is it that drives that impulse? There's a lot more to it than just having a really minimalist room. That can be helpful too, but this dives deeper into what we're all trying to get at here. This video will be a somewhat high-level overview, but if you'd like to go more into detail, I wrote up a blog post with a deeper description of each of these feelings and emotional attachments that they need. So you can check that out at the link in the description of this video as well. I'd like to say thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring this portion of the video. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of inspiring classes for creators. Explore new skills, deepen existing passions, and get lost in creativity. At this point, I've taken a broad range of Skillshare classes, everything from chess to coding with Python, all the way over to illustrating in Procreate on the iPad. It has an incredible breadth of topics and different classes that you can take that are truly inspiring and helpful. One of the best parts is that it is specifically curated for learning. There are no ads, no distractions, and you can dig into exactly what it is you're trying to focus on and learn. I've been really into illustration recently, which is why I got started on this 28-day drawing challenge, Anatomy for Illustration and Comics, by Josiah Brooks. The first 1,000 of my subscribers to click the link in the description of this video will get a free 1-month trial to Skillshare Premium, so you can check out what they have, learn a bunch of stuff, and really get into it. The first emotion on this list is fear. This can often manifest as anxiety or just as general avoidance, being fearful of something in your life. There are a lot of things that can trigger fear. It can be being in a place you're not familiar with, being in a place where something bad has happened in the past. All kinds of things can trigger fear. A lot of the time we can even create fear in our minds simply based on something unknown. So what is it that fear is asking for? Well, primarily fear is asking for comfort. It can be simply comfort from a friend or from a family member or a partner, or it can be from ourselves. Sometimes what I've noticed is that anxiety really is a feeling that just needs to be expressed or externalized. That can be done through writing, journaling. It can be done through talking out loud or speaking with someone that can create an emotionally safe space for you, just to let you express that and not necessarily even confirm those fears, but just let you share them. Sometimes it's nice to just hear, it's going to be okay. This will all work out. We'll figure it out. A lot of the time when I'm feeling anxiety, it's very difficult to meditate because it doesn't feel like anything is processing or happening with that anxiety. So I find that expressing it through either writing and just letting that fear flow out onto the page, or simply talking about it first and then moving into the grounding or coming back to center, coming back into the body, that really allows the actual processing of those emotions to happen. It can't just be dismissed. It can't just be put away or ignored, because it will just stay there and it will build, and I'll end up feeling anxious all day. So it's best to first express and acknowledge it, then go into more of a grounding. I have a video about this that I did not too long ago that I'll link in the description of this video as well. That brings us to emotion number 2, in no particular order: anger. Anger can be fury or frustration, and essentially anger is most often triggered by the feeling of hurt. And the paired attachment with that emotion, with feeling angry, is having hurt that needs to be expressed. Sometimes there's this feeling, and it might not feel like anger, especially if there's a repressed feeling where you're not actually experiencing a spectrum of this one of the emotions. And if you haven't been allowed to express anger in different ways or all kinds of stuff, which I'm not even going to get into now, but hurt needs to be expressed. When someone we care about hurts us in some way, we need to express it, and often anger is one of the ways that it comes out. Now, of course, processing anger can be pretty tricky. It's an intense emotion. It's one that can be overwhelming for a lot of people, and maybe we haven't built a lot of healthy ways to deal with anger, but these are the kind of things that, like screaming into a pillow, maybe warning your household members first before you do this, but like screaming into a pillow, like punching a pillow, finding safe ways to express the anger. Usually what we will find is that beneath the anger is sadness, is hurt, and really it needs to pass through that initial anger in a healthy way first in order to get to the root of the feeling. So if we can express that feeling, it can leave the body, especially when this is expressed in a healthy way, not in a return the hurt type of way. It's a very difficult thing to hold space for someone that is angry or angry at you or something, and allowing that emotion to process without taking it on yourself as the receiving party of that anger. But there's a lot of work there that can happen through therapy to create that space, and to just step into making it safe to express hurt without being angry, because then you can sort of skip straight to the hurt part when there is a place to talk about it and have that be expressed safely. Emotion number 3 is sadness, grief. Wow. It is a powerful one. Dealing with loss, hurt, just losing something or not getting something that you really expected that you would be getting. Obviously, there's a rich blend of emotions between anger and sadness and grief and all these things. It's pretty complicated, but looking at sadness or grief in a relatively simple way, it needs to be expressed and it needs support. It needs understanding and processing. We need to allow ourselves to feel the sadness and express it and have it be heard and even validated instead of dismissed. That way we can actually get in there and feel the emotion and deal with the sense of loss or grief that we have. It can take a very long time. Grief maybe even never fully goes away when we lose something or someone very, very important to us. But it is something that requires support. A lot of the time during a period of grief, we don't know how to support the people that we care about. It's very difficult. It's an emotion that can be overwhelming for the people around us when we're going through something like that. So that's definitely something that I want to tackle with a friend of mine who I'm thinking of very specifically right now, who has a lot to offer in terms of how to process those types of emotions. But what we need is understanding and space. Really, it's like just giving with a lot of these emotions, the first impulse is to want to fix it. Especially when we're sitting with a friend who is sad or grieving, we want to make their hurt go away. We want to try to fix it. And a lot of the time with this one and most of the major emotions, you can't really fix it. It's not something that's necessarily fixable. It's something that just needs to be expressed and felt fully. And so that's the big one with most of these, is just letting it be, not pushing it away, and learning to become more comfortable with the discomfort of emotions. This can be something that takes a long time to learn, especially if it wasn't something that you really got to understand or process well in childhood. It's a big project, but it's doable, and that's why we're here talking about it. Finally, number 4 is shame. And oof, shame is a doozy. Shame is one of those emotions that, at least according to most of the research and conversations I've had, doesn't actually serve a healthy purpose. Guilt is an offshoot of shame that can serve a purpose to create some positive changes in your life, but shame is one of those ones that's just a powerful, heavy emotion that really doesn't help accomplish much. And there's a subtle difference there. But when we feel shame, it can be being cast out by a group of people that we really care about, or rejected by someone we love. We could have mistakes brought up, or just literally make a mistake or feel super embarrassed in that moment. And this one is just so big. It's so important because it's such a powerful emotion that it can drive us to do crazy things to avoid that type of feeling in the future if we don't process it and really get what we need when that feeling occurs. The avoidance, the other stuff, that creates major problems and major twitch material down the line if we don't get in there and deal with it. So with shame, the big thing that we need is compassion, empathy, and understanding. Especially in modern culture, I see so often on Twitter or whatever, people try to use shame to change a person's behavior or to shame them for something that came up in the past. It's like part of the whole cancel culture thing. While there do need to be repercussions for negative actions in a way, it doesn't actually help to change the behavior of the person going forward in a positive way. It just makes them want to not get caught or not feel the feeling of shame that they're experiencing because they're being canceled. That's a whole other video on its own. I'll just put it that way. But essentially, one of the most important things about shame, one that I've been working on myself and really diving into, is the idea of compassion, but more importantly, self-compassion. It is in the moments when we think we deserve it the least that self-compassion is the most important. It creates a safe, emotional environment where we can make mistakes and not beat the crap out of ourselves when we're already down. You would think that flogging ourselves during situations where we make mistakes and going like, how can you do that, blah, 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 being really mean to yourself or anyone else really, would help prevent that mistake in the future to avoid that pain. But really what it ends up doing is causing resentment towards ourselves or towards others, or it causes, avoidance and not even bothering to try. So it's really important that we dig into this idea of self-compassion when we feel embarrassed, when we've made a mistake, when we're giving a talk about something, and something goes horribly wrong, those are the moments when we need it most, when we start getting flush, and that kind of shame feeling can often lead to bigger feelings like panic attacks and other stuff like that if there's not a healthy way to process that emotion. So you may have noticed that in the root of all of these emotional needs, there is a pretty common theme, which is kindness. Kindness, expression, and understanding. We're all looking for that connection, to feel connected to ourselves, to connect to other people. And it's just so rooted in this human need to be a part of something, even if it is simply a part of ourselves, like that connection to our minds, our bodies, our spirits, and just feeling like one. We seek out these connections in time of distress, but usually what ends up happening if we're alone, if we don't have the resources that we need to do it, is we look for that connection on our phones, or we look for that connection to our bodies through eating unhealthy foods and things like that. These are some of my personal experiences. So I hope you found this video helpful wherever you may be on your intentional living path. And if you did, please subscribe here on YouTube. I also have a newsletter that I send out. You can get to that by going to breakthetwitch.com/newsletter. And again, put more links in the description of this video. Thanks so much for your attention. I'll see you soon.